All right, another thing that we want to talk about too, just so that we're all clarified, dealing with negatives and fractions. Okay, so if I have negative 2/3, that's the same as negative 2 over 3, and that's the same as 2 over negative 3. So all of these are equal to each other. That's why there's an equal sign between the three of the items. And the reason it's like that is negative signs can be placed where you want them or where you need them to be. Now, I'll be perfectly honest. In most cases, I prefer when I'm working with fractions with negatives, I often put my negative at the top in the numerator just so I don't forget it. The reason I don't put it here is often my eye, because it's at the bottom, I'm looking at 2 first over instead of the 3. So often I write it like this when I'm doing fractions work. However, all three of them are equal to each other. And whether I'm talking about a negative number or subtracting and negative are mathematically pretty much the same thing. Now let's take a look at multiplying and dividing. Now, when I'm multiplying and dividing, if you notice, I didn't talk about integers multiplying and dividing because I think you should know that from grade 7 and 8. But let's review when we're talking about rational numbers. Okay, so when I have 3/5 times 4/7, how do I actually multiply that? Well, what I do is I multiply the numerators, which is the top number. Sorry, that's a little bit slow coming up there. So I multiply the numerators, which is the 3 times the 4. Okay. And then I multiply the denominators, which is 5 times 7. And then after I've multiplied them, I end up with 12 over 35. And then I see if I can reduce. So reduce means, is there a number that goes evenly into both 12 and 35? Well, in this case, there isn't a number that goes evenly into both of them. Let's look at example number 2. The same thing. I multiply the numerators together, which is the 2 and the 5. Notice there's a negative here, so I'm going to bring that negative up to the number 2, just so I don't forget it. So I have negative 2 times 5. On the bottom, I have 3 times 9. Notice I don't have negative 3 because I took the negative and put it up into the numerator. Okay, so you only can use that negative sign once. So negative 2 times 5 is a negative 10, and 3 times 9 is 27. Again, I try to reduce that. There is not a number that goes into both of them. Okay, now what we're going to look at, the next two questions deal with actually dividing. So when I'm dealing with dividing here, I don't know if you remember, but it was a little different in the sense that what we do is we reciprocate and multiply. Now, reciprocate means to flip something. So the numerator becomes the denominator becomes the numerator. And the one that we flip is the one directly after the dividing sign. So the fraction that I'm going to flip here is the 4/7. So I'm going to have 7/4. Now, I've reciprocated it, but I also then have to change the dividing into a multiplying. Okay, so we have to change that dividing sign into a multiplying sign. Okay, so you can't do one without the other. You have to have both of those going on. So the dividing changes to multiplying. The fraction directly after the dividing sign is the one you reciprocate. And the first one stays the same, so it's 3/5. And now we're doing what we just did in the first two examples. So we're going to have 3 times 7, which is 21, and 5 times 4, which is 20. Again, nothing goes into both of them. Similar idea here. What we're going to do, again, we have a dividing, so we're going to change the dividing to a multiplying. And when we do that, then we have to reciprocate the second one. Okay, notice we still have a negative, but the 5 is on the top this time and the 4 on the denominator. And we have a negative 2/3 stays the same. Okay, watch out. We have two negatives. Two negatives multiplied together is a positive. So I have 2 times 5, which is 10, and 3 times 4, which is 12. Now this one can be reduced. At least they're both even numbers, so I know that 2 goes into both of them. 2 goes into 10 5 times, and 2 goes into 12 6 times. So now it's in reduced form. Okay, so what you're going to do tomorrow in class is you're actually going to do some practicing of this so that it all comes to the front part of your brain.